back, citizens, to an all-new episode of the Batcave Podcast. It's your old bat chum, John S. Drew here, and here we go. Slaves of the Rising Sun, Episode 4 of the Batman 1943 serial. And joining me to talk about it once again is the man himself, I won't say publisher, but he's the owner-editor of Gotham City 14
I like
Miles.
That's better.
Mr. Jim Beard. Hey, Jim.
Hey, happy to be back. Thank you.
So, the Slaves of the Rising Sun. Now, before we get into that, I do want to take a few moments to talk about our fourth and final star. Although I'm seriously thinking that maybe for the next episode, we also take a few minutes to talk about Alfred. But our fourth and final star here being Shirley Patterson, who played Linda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, next.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Not a whole lot here. I liked her in this serial, but she didn't have that remarkable a career. 1922 birth, 1995 passing from cancer. She was also known as Sean Smith. She's Canadian.
Sean Smith. Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Like a number of women actors of the time, she came into the profession sort of sideways through beauty pageants. She was Miss California at one point.
Oh,
yeah.
There's nothing. She didn't have anything that stands out. I mean, a pretty girl.
Right.
Competent acting. It's just another sort of these dime a dozen ones of that time.
Pretty much, but she's
no Evelyn Ankers.
Well,
but who is, right?
Now, okay, but at the same time, she managed to have, I wouldn't say anything distinguishable, anything that stands out with the exception of one thing. She did manage to have a career lengthy enough in the 40s through to the late 50s in television and movies, parts throughout. She even left acting for several years to concentrate on her marriage, returned and picked up almost like where she left off, making again movies and television. Her final movie role, interestingly enough, was the movie It, The Terror from Beyond Space.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen that, but okay, so she's in that.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
She plays Ann Anderson.
I'm glad that and at first I couldn't remember her, or I wasn't sure who she was, but at least the character she plays in this is actually from the comic books.
Yeah. I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah.
Now, was she Bruce's fiancée?
Well, I have to look that
because he did have one.
It's such a Julie Madison is Bruce's first fiancée.
Okay, there you go. That's what I'm getting mixed up. Yeah, I'm getting mixed up.
Yeah, whether Linda was or not, it's a blip. It's sort of a blip on the radar.
Now let me just see if I get this. So there was Julie, and she was his fiancée, and she left to become an actress.
Yes.
Because that's then when we're introduced to Clayface.
Right. And then, of course, in the modern era, they had to say that she became a porn actress or something.
No, really?
Yeah, it's
I didn't need to know that.
Wait, look it up. I think she has a name like Portia Storm.
Oh, jeez. Oh, wait a minute. No, Portia Storm was also something they did because they changed her name for the movies.
Okay.
In the 40s.
I could be completely wrong. I swear to God it's something like that where she had a stage name.
Right.
Yeah, Julie Madison. She became an actress under the name of Portia Storm.
Oh, jeez.
You're right. Right, and she was the target of Clayface, yeah.
Yes. Yep. The original Clayface.
I love that. Portia Storm.
And pretty much that's it about Shirley Patterson. That's all I got. I mean, I know that it's almost like, why'd you bother? But I will say I do like her here. She plays very well the very beleaguered girlfriend, frustrated at Bruce not being more manly, being more open, being more available.
I will admit that yes, I agree with that. To the point of why is she with this guy?
Yeah.
You know, it's just again, it's like, but it's the same in the comics. It's like why did Bruce bother? Knowing all the complications that would arise, and then all you're doing is really just sort of pissing off your girlfriend slash fiance.
Yep.
You know, it's like, if you really do want to drive her away, just break it off, you know? I think they realized early on that Batman could not have a steady, love interest.
Right.
That didn't really work. Whereas with Superman, that became a very important thing with Lois. But with Batman, I could, they saw very early on, they, tried a couple of them. Well, Julie and then Linda, and then that was sort of it. Until the day that they decided that that Batman needed his own Lois Lane, and they came up with Vicky Vale.
Right.
And really, she wasn't around for that long, in the comics, but it's the same in this serial. It's like, why does she bother? She seems to be disgusted with Bruce almost all the time. And I don't blame her, with the way he acts.
No, what was it also in the Batman 66 comic? They tried to sort of establish him and Kathy Kane. Now, I'm not done with my reading yet, so I don't know if they bother at some point and have her become Batwoman. But Kathy is very...
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It's been a while since I read those. And
but she becomes very frustrated.
There's a nod to it, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But... all right, let's talk about this episode here.
Daka and his traitorous hirelings plan to blow up an important railroad bridge. But Batman and Robin discover the plot and zoom into action.
We've got Batman on the train tracks, just on the bridge there. The train is bearing down. Yep. And, this one is an easy do, though. It's a slam dunk because Robin just runs back into the scene and pushes Batman off the bridge before jumping into the water himself.
Yeah.
And the train goes by. I did like the fact that they're genuinely wet. They are soaked as they come out of the water.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because in the previous installment, and you don't get any sort of idea how that trestle is, or how high up it is, or what's down below it. And at one point, Batman knocks one of the guys off, and you think, "Wow, he just killed that guy." Mm-hmm. But chances are, you can see it's seemingly not that big of a drop into the water, and the rest of them, were able to do it. So I don't think he really ended up killing that guy. I think the guy probably just fell into the water. I don't know. It's hard to say. Back then in the comics, they didn't seem to worry about that, or at least before Batman took on Robin. It was the usual, do whatever to the bad guys. They're just bad guys, and they died.
Right.
But it's actually, by the time Robin comes around, there's an absolute no killing kind of a thing going on.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But again, this is not a Batman serial. This is a serial that just happens to have a guy in it dressed up as Batman.
Yeah. Yeah. Now we cut to Daka. And he's feeding his pet crocodile.
Hello, my little pets. Come on, Nojo. Here, Sacco. Want your breakfast, huh? All right. Good. Eat them all up now. Yeah, good one. Oh, good. Don't you bite him. Here, one for you. Last one. Good, huh? All gone. Got no more. Uh-huh. Still hungry? I got no more, but...
This is the highlight of the entire episode for me.
It is, right?
It really is. You know, we've said it before, you know, as horribly racist stereotype as this character is, he tends to be more fascinating than anybody else in this whole thing. And I just love the part. It's such a simple little thing, and it doesn't even need to be in there, but they bother to put it in there where he has that moment where he decides he's going to throw the guy into the crocodiles. He says, "But you know, do you want a bigger treat or whatever it is that he says, or something more substantial, you know?" And then he gets the buzz. Is it from the door?
Yes.
There's and that. You know, that thing that he does, like he's like foiled, like he was gleeful about throwing the guy in.
That was Warren.
What?
That was Warren, right?
It was Warren, right? Yeah. Which it's like, okay, so he's done with Warren.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. He's like no other use for Warren other than to throw. But just again, that little moment where he's like, like failed again, you know. It was almost like a little Colonel Klink moment, you know. And then, you know, but what a fun little touch.
Yeah.
And I really would love to know if that was Nash that came up with that, or if that was scripted or whatever. It's such a fun little moment that for a movie serial. Really, like, why did they even bother? Move things along here, you know? But it's such a character moment that this guy is so evil, you know, that he zombifies somebody and then throw them into the crocodiles just to feed them.
Yep.
And it's a guy that seemed to be very important to him at one point, is not, you know, and then to have that little fit there, you know, that tiny little fit when he's foiled for his fun, you know, his own little pleasure. It's a fun moment.
Right. And the buzzer is the arrival of the other members of his council, his league there.
Yeah.
And we also see Foster arrive. And he's fed up because...
He's fed up. And he does a really good job of acting like he's fed up.
Yes. He tells Daka he's switching sides. It leads to another rousing speech from Daka.
The League of the New Order of Hirohito, heavenly ruler and prince of the rising sun, marches on, and nothing will ever stop it. You might just as well try to stop the tides and the winds.
Yeah.
About the emperor and the world and stuff.
The new order.
Yeah.
The new order.
The new order.
Yeah.
Daka, you know, calls in his zombies to get at Foster, but Foster pulls out his gun. He kills one of them, and so Daka, you know, stop because he doesn't want to lose all his men. Foster backs out of the room, and as he does, he doesn't realize he's stepping over the crocodile pit. So Daka opens it up and drops Foster into it.
I mean, we know now why the earlier scene with him feeding the croc, it's all set up. So we know, you know, but it's perfect. I mean, you know, this is all very James Bondian. You know, you can see so much of this transferred into something like Dr. No and other things, you know, later on like that. It's very, very much like the James Bond stuff, you know, okay, you go, you know, with, you know, I'm letting you go, you know, just go, and then dropping them into a crocodile pit.
Right. Yeah. Now they get word that the Gotham City Foundation is expecting another shipment of radium, and that Linda has the paperwork for it. So Daka needs to intercept the shipment, and he needs to get Linda.
Yeah, there's a lot of radium floating around in this area. I don't know if radium really was just kind of like all over the place at this time. I think people were fascinated by it.
Right.
You know, and it became this magical sort of thing, even though people had it in their watches. You know,
right.
But yeah, it's just amazing. Like, you know, don't worry about that radium shipment because there's another one. You know, We lose one, that's okay. There'll be another one. This stuff's all over the place.
Exactly. It's easy to find because it glows.
Yeah, and I like what's coming up too. This is good because it helps me with the Bruce / Batman character. But go on.
Is that because Linda calls Bruce, telling him about a fortune teller that has information on her Uncle Martin? But Bruce kind of like, okay, good luck, because I'm taking Dick to the polo matches.
Yeah.
But he does ask for the address, though.
Yes, right. Yeah. And of course, she doesn't think twice about it.
She doesn't think twice about it. In fact, instead, she just gets more mad at Bruce because then he becomes a little condescending as he tells her she shouldn't be going there.
Yeah. Yes. Yep. But we know what's up.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
And this was a good opportunity. I'm guessing you liked it because Bruce, again, acting like the disinterested playboy.
Yes, but that he takes on another role other than Batman. I don't know. Bear with me on this one. In this sort of reminded me of the Clayton Moore Lone Ranger, who many times went in disguise as someone other than the Lone Ranger.
Yes,
I mean that became quite a trope, for his version of the Lone Ranger to have him in disguises, But I like that they get the fortune teller out of the way. They stuff him behind the couch.
Yeah.
And then Bruce takes the place of the fortune teller, and good thing the lights are down low and all that.
Enter the Temple of Fate. Swami Da will see you in here. Yes?
I was told to come here to receive some information about my uncle, Martin Warren.
Please be seated. You are in grave danger, Miss Page.
Who are you?
Never mind that. Leave here at once and return to your home. Go.
It was just something interesting that Batman did, because so far he's not doing very much interesting things. He seems to be always sort of behind, acting impulsively. What little plans he does have don't really seem to be that great. So this was just something very interesting, I thought that he would bother to take the place of the fortune teller and go from there.
Yeah, I agree, but I do think that there was a nice little bit in the whole thing as he's, getting dressed up as the Swami, because Dick finds that the headpiece has headphones and a microphone in it there, and Bruce talks to Daka.
Yes.
He doesn't know it's Daka, but he makes the comment, "What a strange voice."
Yes. I'm surprised at this point he doesn't say something like a Jap, some strange Jap voice.
Right.
But yes, I totally agree with you. You get a little illicit, thrill at that moment that, our two main characters have now met in an odd sort of way that they actually are, communicated with each other, but neither one knowing that who the other one is, So yeah, that was a cool little moment.
Right. Now he tells Dick to stick around, like stay hidden and stuff. He also wants Alfred, who's waiting outside, to be prepared to follow Linda, and then Bruce then calls the police to come pick up the fortune teller.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's funny that the police jump when Batman speaks, but they're also still, bothered by they don't know who he is, and it's the relationship between Batman and the police is sort of ill-defined in this as to, are they after him or does he work with them? He's not the duly deputized officer of the law that he is in the 60s. I mean, if you remember, the police chief at one point earlier on said something like, "You find him, I'll put him on the force."
Yeah.
It's like, would they, if they had the chance, would they grab Batman and bring him in, to the station, or what? And we haven't really gotten to it yet, but we're to understand that Batman is a government agent in this serial. He's not a vigilante. But the police still seem very interested in wanting to get to him or hear from him. So they must not know he's a government agent, I assume. I don't know why Batman in this thing doesn't just let them know what the deal is.
Well, he may not be able to if the government don't want him telling.
That's true. I know. So supposedly now, and I don't know whether this is real or not, that they supposedly could not at this time, because of the censors, have Batman as breaking the law, working outside the law.
Right.
I don't know whether that's true or not. It seems odd to me, because if it was okay in the comics, you know what I mean? Why would it be a big deal? But then again, even though there was a comics code, it didn't say anything about vigilanteism, because obviously most of the characters were vigilantes.
Right.
Yeah, but I'm trying to remember if, like, in the Superman serial, if he worked outside the law and whether that was allowed.
It was, with the Superman serials, from what I remember, it was just accepted that he was Superman. The police never really did anything in the way of questioning.
Yeah,
also, you could see,
probably scared of him.
Well, part of that is that, but part of it, I think, too, is just the whole thing of his face is exposed. Whether you know him or not, at least you see him. Batman is masked. Spider-Man is masked. I mean, think about it. That's part of J. Jonah's problem. Who is he? So instead of just accepting the fact that he is who he is and he does what he does, Jameson wants more. I liken it to this, and this is what I do like about the serial, is that, okay, he's not duly deputized and all that, but the police do accept him to an extent, but they want more. In the 66 series, God love him, but they were willing to accept Batman at face value, give him a deputized status, and have no clue where he goes, to the point where you've got O'Hara arguing with Gordon on one or two occasions. Whether does he go, and all this stuff, and Gordon blowing up at him. Gordon is willing to accept the donuts. He doesn't care how they're made.
Right. Yeah, because he knows that the whole police force would fall apart if Batman. Jeez.
But whereas our man here, Captain what's his name, he still questions it. He says, but I want to know, and then bring him in, and I'll get him on the force. This isn't about breaking the law. This is about just, work with us, not, alongside us. Work with us.
Yeah. Yes.
Well,
he's more concerned about how his police force looks to have to have this guy doing all their work.
Sure.
Whereas Neil Hamilton, he was more than happy to let Batman do all this work.
He was more than happy, but at the same time, he'd also be so delusional about our fine police force. It's like, dude, no. At least this guy says, he's doing your job for you.
Yep.
So we cut. Well, we don't cut. When we get back to our story here, we find out that Bruce discovers that Linda never left the shop, because Alfred's still outside. And he's like, she hasn't left.
Yeah, right.
So they search around the fortune teller's shop there. They find her knocked out, and her paperwork is stolen as an armored car speeds by the store. So they follow with Dick. Now, wait a minute. How did I do this, though? Because did they leave Alfred behind? Because I've got the note here saying Dick's driving and Bruce changes.
Yeah, they must have.
They must have left Alfred. That's right, because then we get to the road. They catch up with the armored car, which is speeding along. The goons start shooting. Dick pulls the car alongside the armored car, and Batman jumps on it, and he's got with him the radium gun.
Yeah. Now, you out there in Batman serial land may say, "Oh, this is great. What a great Batman moment." But actually, it's just a great serial moment.
It's a great serial moment.
It's another cliche, get up alongside the car, jump over, try to, years later, Indiana Jones does the same thing because it's a Saturday morning serial, tradition. So it's not necessarily a great Batman moment, but it is a good pulpy serial, type of moment. So we'll go with it.
I'll give you the Batman,
I love
though.
it that he has the radium gun. Sure.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That's a Batman thing, though. Let me use the radium gun. Would you say that's at least clever?
A Batman thing would be that he had something in his utility belt.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Which he doesn't. It's a belt, and it holds his pants up, and that's about it. It's not a utility belt yet.
Well, he's on the roof. He uses the gun to blast it open, knocking out the goons on the inside of the back of the truck. He then climbs to the front of the cab area there, wrestles with the driver, and in doing so, it sends the armored car off the road and down a hillside as we come to the end of episode 4.
Oh, no.
However will he get out of this one?
And, another typical serial thing. Car goes over the cliff.
Yes. No, that's definitely.
Yeah. And you said it the last time, and years later in the 60s show, the twist was actually Batman or Bruce strapped to a gurney to going over a cliff,
It's funny, too, because we haven't seen anything in the way of, with these cliffhangers, being anything, monumental, like in the 66 series. Let's strap him to a Bill Finger-esque device and such.
Yeah, you're hoping for a death trap.
Right, a death. Well, remember what I said. If you look at, you may not remember this, but those of you who listened to the first season, because Jim came in towards the end, and by then we did start having more traditional death traps, Batman 66 ones. Those early episodes are all cliffhanger style, from the 40s, whether it's, Robin's trapped in the Riddler's clutches as he's putting a head vice on him, or Bruce is trapped on the conveyor belt heading towards the furnace.
Furnace, right. Aunt Harriet is hung suspended over, what was it, a vat of acid or whatever.
It was the flaming oil.
That's it, the flaming oil, There's a lot of connective tissue between the 60s show and, like you said at the very beginning there, and the movie serials. That's totally what it is. It's the where do you think they got the cliffhanger thing from? There is precedent in the comic books by this time, 1943, for death traps, and in fact, those first 11 stories before Batman takes on Robin, in those first 11 stories, there is one big death trap or whatever, and he gets out of it in a spectacularly 1966 sort of way. And I remember how startled I was to find that out when I did the research for my essay for Gotham City 14 Miles. About why that Batman in the 60s show is as acceptable as any Batman, and to show people that first year of Batman, which everybody thinks is so dark and ominous and serious, is really as campy and goofy as anything. And one of the things that's in there is the death trap and the unbelievable way of getting out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would hope that there would, somewhere down the line in this serial, that there's something a little bit better than trains coming and you're stuck on the track, your car's going over the cliff and that sort of thing. All standard stuff, all what kids expected at that time, but not necessarily those big ideas that you hope for from Batman.
Right, exactly, yeah. So as we wrap this episode up here, Jim, I thought I'd take a moment and ask you, last time we talked about the Batman book that you are putting together. How are things going over, though, at Comic Chaos Podcast?
Oh, actually great. We had a little blip there, unfortunate, where we skipped a week or two there, but we are back on track. We are hoping that we're building our audience, but we really need more. What I think we're really at the point we're doing right now is, yes, it is a comic book and pop culture podcast, and we know that there's a million of those. What I'm hoping is that the unique setup of myself and Fred and who we are, and that we're older guys, you know, and I think this sort of banter and back and forth that we have is hopefully what, you know, people are really going to like. And the things that we talk about. And plus that I think that it's people who aren't necessarily big-time comic book readers, and maybe they're coming in through the movies, you know, will enjoy what we're talking about, because we don't, you know, even though, yes, I'm you know, a comic book quote-unquote expert, and Fred is not, you know, we don't sit there and use a lot of language that nobody can understand except fanboys. But this is what I like about it. Fred does know a lot of pop culture things, and he is a pop culture person, but he's not familiar with a lot of what modern comics are. You know, he only remembers reading comics when he was a kid. He's about 10 years older than me, so, you know, he has some memories of reading comics before I was even around. So again, I think there's some really these unique things, and I hope everybody will give us a listen. Boy, we just had a really fantastic one where we had Keith Dallas, my collaborator on the Ghostbusters comics that I have done, and he's the editor of the Tomorrow series of the American Comic Book Chronicles. I can never remember the name of that series of books. But anyways, we just had this really fantastic discussion about the comic book collector mentality that I think is so accessible by anybody, people who don't really know about it and people who are into it and will identify with it. I think it just turned into this incredible discussion, this back and forth, and I hope everybody will take a look for it. We're on the iHeart Podcast Network, but it's all over. You can get it on iTunes and Spreaker and all over. Comic Chaos Podcast. And
there's also a Facebook page if you are on the Facebook.
Yep. And then there's a Twitter handle for it, which is Comic Chaos Pod. So check us out. You know, look at the episodes that we have, and you know, try one or two and see what you think. We need more feedback on it.
Close in. Get alongside.
What for? You can't break into that thing.
I can blast my way in if there's any kick left in this radium gun.
You know, we don't want to keep doing this in a vacuum.
Right.
I know these things take time to grow, but we're having a good time at least doing it.
Very cool. Well, that's going to do it then for this episode of the Batcave Podcast. Tune in. We're continuing our looks at Electro Woman and Dyna Girl, Monster Squad. Robert Long and I will be along with another edition of Some Days You Just Can't Get Rid of a Bomb. Joe Stuber and I will be talking about Filmation 77, plus Dan Greenfield and I are talking the Batman 66 comics. So stay tuned for all that. Stay tuned for our next episode here, looking at part 5 of this 1943 serial, The Living Corpse. Once again, continuing that whole theme of zombies and such. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Zombies and such.
Zombies and such. Yeah. I've never been a big zombie fan, so I just look at these as mind-controlled people, not zombies.
Well, they are. They're not really zombies. Yeah.
So until next time, folks, thank you so much for listening. Once again, Jim, citizens, take care, everybody.
Take care.
Daka is communicating with a Jap submarine. What deviltry does he plan? Who do Daka and his hirelings have in the coffin? And must Robin carry on the struggle alone? Don't fail to see The Living Corpse, Chapter 5 of Batman, at this theater next week.